Hello and welcome to VMware Tansi's third installment of our Dev Deep Dive series. In this series, we bring together the industry experts to discuss technical aspects of the industry and the trending topics that matter to developers. My name is Layla and I am a developer advocate at VMware Tansi. And today I am joined by a panel of amazing industry leaders who will discuss how developers can get ahead through continued learning. I am excited today to be your moderator and to learn from the panelists and share my own experience with encouraging a learning environment and using learning to create a successful career. Be sure to follow along and drop your questions in the chat and for our live audience Q&A, and that will be at the end of the session, so make sure you hang around for that. That is enough from me. Let's get to know our three panelists to share more about their career journeys, their advice, and any resources they recommend for developers just like you to get started. So let's meet. First up, Alyssa Nicoll, Senior Developer Advocate at Progress. And then we have Eddie Jaoude, DevRel and founder of Eddie Hub. And finally, but not lastly, Annie Laughlin, Staff Product Manager at VMware. So I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. I know it's quite late for some of us. I won't say who, but let's start everything off by learning a little bit more about each and every one of you, your personal journeys. I'd love you to share a little bit about your background and why continued learning is a passion for you. Eddie, you're the late person here, aren't you? Not late arriving, but it's late for you. So let's kick off with you.
Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here. I'm super excited to geek out with you all, as I always say, and learn from you all. So I can't wait for this panel. I've been excited about it for quite a few weeks now, and I'm really excited to hear everyone's questions. So do write them in the chat. I can't wait. I love questions. So a bit about me. I'm a full stack developer, and I provide DevRel as a service is my business. We have a team of 3 of us now. And as Layla said, it's quite late for me. We travel the world as digital nomads. I'm currently in Thailand to escape the UK winter. I also do things like consultancy for companies who want to open source their product, or they want to kind of get more contributors to the open source project. I'm always learning from the community, and that's why I started Eddie Hub, so I can learn from the community and hopefully I can share some of my experiences. We work on real world open source projects. And as you mentioned, continued learning is super, super important. It is vital. I didn't do a computer science degree, so at the beginning of my career, my first few roles, I really felt out of my depth. Actually, let's be honest here, okay? Even like 18 years later, I still feel out of my depth and I'm still learning every day, and it's just amazing. And that's part of the fun, because if we stop learning, we're gonna stagnate, and technology is gonna move forward. And part of the fun is keeping up with trends. And I can't wait to dive deeper into this later on.
Oh, that's awesome, Eddie. I can relate to so much of that. So Annie, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. So I am a staff product manager at VMware, currently building a product called Spring Academy that is all about continuous learning for engineers and learning how to build with Spring. I actually started off as a front end engineer many years ago, and slowly made my kind of route into product. And I think one of the things is I really wouldn't have found my home as a PM if I hadn't continuously been learning and wanting to grow and just been curious of lots of different areas within kind of the larger engineering product world. So, and I also feel like you meet really awesome people if you have a sense of curiosity and, want to learn new things every day or every week. So,
Oh, well, I'm so happy you could join us. And I think keeping that sense of curiosity is vital to continuing to learning. Alyssa, why don't you tell us all about you and your journey?
So I am an Angular GDE and a DevRel at Progress, as you mentioned. And I started my journey off by going to school for web dev and design at Full Sail, which is in Florida. And I, of course, fell in love with it, but I actually got my first job through a kind of like a mini conference meetup thing called Bar Camp. And it was like a play on FooBar. and they essentially like just let you show up Saturday morning and write your name on a whiteboard if you wanted to give a talk. And so I did, and it was right before I graduated, and the CEO of Code School at the time was there in my session and was like, I love it. I love your teaching style. Come into the office on Monday. And so that's how I got my first job at Code School. And from there, they were acquired by Pluralsight, and I got into front-end development, still in love with Angular, and eventually found my way into DevRel. So continued learning, it is built in, part of my personality. Sometimes it can be very painful when coupled with limited time or attention span. Hashtag ADHD for the win, right? So, but I am super blessed to be in this industry and to get to continue to learn and grow. Actually, Layla has recently been helping me get into .NET and learn that side of the tech industry, and I've been having a blast. So I'm very excited to be on this panel. So thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have all three of you. I love learning. I've always learned. So it just feels so nice to be here and to share your journeys and where you're going with it. So let's get stuck into our questions. And remember, folks, keep popping your questions into the chat. We will get to them at the end, unless there's something really pertinent, and then like to that moment. And then I'm sure we've got loads of helpers behind the scenes. They'll ping it towards us. Okay, but don't worry, we'll get to the questions at the very end. So keep them coming. Okay, so I've got a good question for you all. So tech trends are always changing quickly, don't they, just? I mean, it just feels like a roller coaster the whole time. But we've got things like new coding languages and AI tools like a certain chat GPT. I mean, it's everything at the moment. It's the fire hose for sure. And it can be challenging for developers to keep their skills sharp. Can you share advice for where to start in approaching a learning routine and things like that? Annie, why don't you let us know how you keep that going?
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm so curious to hear what others think, because I think it really depends on the individual. So my learning style, I like structure and having something a little bit more regimented, which is not for everyone. So one part of it is like having a set schedule where I just know if it's 15 minutes every day or 1 hour every week, I'm like committing that to learning the new skill. And I think the other thing is like before I even get into the routine is I work well with goals. So is it I'm trying to get a new job, or I'm trying to ramp up on a specific, part of a Spring framework. So like having that goal and then working backwards. So I knew like when I wanted to transition into doing product for larger platforms, I actually went and talked to my mentors, found some like platform product managers and said, hey, like what are the skills that really help you like succeed that you use every day or every week? And then try to figure out like what were those big gaps, that things I didn't have. And then I ended up finding like resources that they recommended, took a class, and then that's when I kind of set into hey, every day for 1 hour, I'm just going to block time and learn this skill. So having a little bit of structure and then kind of working backwards from a goal that means something to me usually help
I
move
think
me
that's
along.
really interesting that you had it structured, that you dedicate that time as part of your daily routine. I think that's a really good tip, actually. And I'm writing down notes right now. As you said, I've got my pen. I'm a pen and paper person. That's one of my ways of learning. And I also love that idea that you've gone to speak to people already doing the thing that you want to learn to find out what's actually important, because that is so difficult to tease through all of this knowledge that's coming at you and decipher exactly what the important nugget is that you should learn and retain. So, Alyssa, I know we've done lots of learning fun together. So why don't you share how you like to learn? And I know one of the things you like to do, and it's going in your ears, isn't it?
You know things. All right, we're gonna have to. I'll like give my answer, and then you'll tell me what you know, because I'm quite sure I will forget that part of it. But you mentioned things like AI tools, Chat GPT. So a lot of times with the hype, I try my very hardest not to get swept up. Unless that motivates you, for me, it just overwhelms me. So I legit just try to ignore it. I focus on the communities that have brought me joy and just had open arms in the past, and I seek to like build, create, teach like anything I can in that community. When I was leaving code school to go do front end work at a startup, a designer, Dan Denny, he is like super just like amazing. And he said, he gave me this piece of advice that stuck with me, but he said, you really need to continue teaching. Even though you're going into full-time development, you need to keep that skill going. And he was like, you start a YouTube channel and just like regularly post what you're working on in your dev job. And so that actually kept my teaching skills sharp and my interest to learn new things alive. You'd be surprised at like when you're teaching and you're out there in the community, how that can fire back into you yourself learning new things and learning new techniques. So for you in the community right now, or who's watching the live stream, it might not be YouTube, maybe creating content through blog posts, Twitch streams, be a guest on a podcast, right? Speak at a live event. But I find that giving back into the community is the easiest way to pour into yourself. And that kind of sounds counterintuitive, but what were you going to say, Layla? What was your thing? Because
I know that you're big on listening to things,
audio,
like
yeah,
listening. That really helps you, and
it perplexes me. Do you own like hard books for code? Like, yeah, I think you do. You're one of those people. It perplexes me. Like, I'll walk into somebody's office and I'm like, you're learning that way? Like, I just audiobooks, man. I can't read to save my life.
I can't do audio. I can't. I'm so visual. I need to see the physical book. I look at all these little tabby things.
It is a talent that I do not possess.
You have other talents, and I think this is it. It's about finding the way that works for you to be able to learn. There's so many different ways, and mixing it up for your brain. So our brains don't like to do repetitive tasks. So they like to mix it up and learn in different ways. And the same thing that works for someone won't work for you. Eddie, you gave lots of thumbs up then. So how do you mix it up? How do you learn all these different things and keep it all coming in?
I love what was just said. It really resonated with me. Annie was talking about kind of like little and often. I like to see it like the gym, right? You know, you can't go, you know what, I want to get really fit this weekend, so I'm going to do like 100 hours this weekend, and I want to wake up like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It doesn't work like that, right? It's little and often, like brushing our teeth. And if you miss a day for whatever reason, it's fine. Your teeth aren't going to fall out. And same with learning. So I think it's definitely keep it consistent, little and often. And what Elise was saying as well, like really resonate. Learning in public is so important because you get to keep accountable. You'll learn it so much better by trying to explain it. And I love that. That's why I love pairing with like a variety of different people. They don't have to be in tech. They don't have to be more experienced than me. They could be new to tech. I learned so much from their questions, and I think I say something, they say, but why? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me look it up. And then afterwards I go, now I really understand it. Whereas before I might have just done it because it worked, but I didn't really quite get it. So it really, really resonated with me. I mean, just to add a couple of small points on, don't start learning everything at once. Don't jump on trends. Like I do wait a lot. Until things kind of solidify a bit and don't change. It takes a lot of time and energy if things are, technology hopping around a lot. I try and do like the T-shaped learning, which is I try to be aware of everything, but then I go deep in like one or two things, and those one or two things will complement each other rather than challenge each other. So I think, Layla, you said you do .NET. So if someone's doing .NET, which is a backend language, then maybe don't do another backend language that kind of does a similar sort of thing. I know they've all got their pros and cons, but there's a lot of overlaps. Maybe do something, if you want to do something different, maybe do front end or something that complements it, I think. Yeah. So you don't get confused. And, you can always change later, right? 1 year, 3 years down the line, whatever it is, if you want to change, then change. That's fine. And that probably will happen eventually anyway. I'll just say to everyone, don't compare yourself to somebody else, right? I always find everyone goes faster than me. And I think everyone thinks that, the grass is always greener on the other side. You think everyone's going so much faster than you, but we all have different availability on how often we can, do the extra learning and so forth. So as long as you're moving forward, I think that's really important, and moving forward at your own speed as well is really, really important. And continue to learn from others and share what you've learned, right? We can all learn so much faster by learning different things and then kind of exchanging notes and helping each other out. And that's why I love the community and I love open source, because I just feel everything just is fun and it goes so fast as well at the same time.
Yeah, there's quite a few things that I've picked up in these conversations. So I'm going to ask a few questions now. Okay, just dig into this a little bit deeper. So one thing that Eddie just said then I have a feeling was going to resonate with Alyssa, and that was that you shouldn't be afraid to say that I don't know. Alyssa and I have given keynotes together, and one of the big points that we have in our keynote session is don't be afraid to say I don't know. Alyssa, do you want to just dig into why that I know that resonates with you? I don't need to ask you if that did.
It does. I actually have a cute little slide of my 3-year-old, and I say that it starts super young because I actually, I'd ask him a question, and if he didn't know, like, what is this, baby? And he would just be like, Mars, and just like make it up. And I was like, it's okay to say I don't know. And so like we're working on that skill and building that muscle. And Layla and I have talked before about how whether it's because maybe you're vulnerable in your job, and so admitting I don't know might make people question, like, why do you have this position, right? Why are you working on this project? But through like streaming often and having people teach me things, I, at first in my learning journey, thought that people would shut me down quickly, like, oh, we don't have time to get into that. Or, they'd have different excuses. And I started realizing often it was because that person just didn't feel comfortable or didn't know. And we'd like reached the end of their knowledge on a certain subject. And their bailout was anything other than those words. I don't know, right? So it's very important. I think a muscle to have, like to be able to just admit that and to like learn something in that moment. But it can be scary. I do admit that side of it. So
I think it comes down to having an environment where it's safe to fail, to say that it's okay to not know things. And I think that comes down to everybody to try and nurture that environment to make it a safe place. Now, Eddie, Alyssa, and I all work in DevRel. We have all the opportunity to learn in public, to do live streams, to hop on a podcast. Annie, you don't work in DevRel. You work like really serious stuff, product ownership and product management. How do you feel that if you're not in sort of more a public facing thing, because let's face it, Eddie, Alyssa, and I, we're the minority here that we have this opportunity. It can be part of our day job to be learning and things like that. How do you fit it all in with family life? And I know that you just got married, and you've got your dog and everything like that. How do you have a personal life, like do the things that you love doing? How do you keep your work stuff going and hitting those deadlines, and how do you fit in this learning without, and this is the important thing, without going bang and having burnout?
Sure. Yeah, I think one thing that thankfully my work allows is like time to have professional development within my workday. But I think the other thing when I'm on projects is just what you were saying. I'd like really hit home of like, if I'm curious about something and I don't know, because, I haven't been an engineer for 10 years, everyone on my team is super humble and willing to teach. So if I'm curious about, hey, like we have 3 solutions here, help me understand, why number 3 is probably more advantageous than 1 or 2. And just continually kind of asking why and being curious about, like I love engineering. Somehow I made it over to product, but I always want to like pretend I'm still an engineer in some way. So I think that's one part is like who you're working with. If they know that you still want to learn and you're curious about, their expertise and their roles, more likely than not, they're very welcome to chat with you and give you background, and help you learn. I think the other thing too is, so the product I'm working on now, Spring Academy, is like this large learning platform for Spring engineers, but all of our courses and things we're teaching are kind of real world based. So they're things that like, hey, I'm on the job, I got to figure out how to use Spring Batch. So going and finding courses where I can actually learn how to do something that my job needs right now in a real world way, I think can be really advantageous. Um, yeah, so I think there are opportunities to work it in. I know one thing for product is we have kind of a smaller product practice group. So every week a little cohort of us will meet and like discuss like, chat GPT or something that's kind of interesting to all of us. One person will be the facilitator, so it kind of keeps all of us learning with other active folks so you don't kind of feel alone, or you don't feel like, hey, I'm taking time away for work, or, maybe this isn't the most beneficial way to use my 1 hour every day. So lots of little strategies in there, but always starting small. I like
Yeah.
when Eddie said that. I was like, exactly. Tiny
Just little
habits.
bites. And I think what you said there
Yeah.
is applicable to us all. Alyssa said motivated like by teaching others, and Eddie said that as well. So for example, when I want to do a new conference presentation, I look at something that interests me and I want to learn more of, so I start to teach that. But you in the workplace, Annie, can do that as well. Like you can say, all right, well, let's have a brown bag lunch for everybody. And you all do that. And you're like, I'm just going to consolidate this thing into a 15-minute presentation, a lightning talk. You could set them up once a week, and it will encourage everybody to start learning. And that rising tide, as they like to say, as my boss likes to say, lifts all ships. And so you can keep learning with everybody there. And we're talking about chat GPT, and I see my teammate Dan Vega is in here, and I know he's a massive fan of chat GPT. Well, I'll tell you what, I was trying to learn. I was saying to Eddie earlier, I was trying to learn some stuff with MongoDB today, and it was just killing me. I just couldn't get it to work. Do you know what I did? I was going through, I had 100 tabs open. I couldn't find the answer. I went to ChatGPT and said, do you know how to do this with this? And it just went, you need to do this. And I was like, oh, I put it in and everything started working. So all these new tools that you can learn from them. They're there as tools. They're not going to take our jobs. You don't have to feel threatened. You can go in and say, all right, I don't know something. Let's get the AI to teach me, with the caveat that it's not always right. Often it's not right. It can sound exceedingly authoritative and it's not right. But I think you just need to look around you and use the things that come out. And I think Alyssa said it well, and Eddie, stay away from that bleeding edge. Even just approach that cutting edge with caution, and just let things settle, because otherwise it can be a wasted effort, in my opinion. I've learned stuff that was on the bleeding edge and then everything changes and you're like, why did I learn that? So, just think about go back to what Annie said about having, talking to people who are already doing it and seeing what they think is good to learn. So let's go on to our next question then, because I'm loving this. And I see that Eddie's encouraging people on LinkedIn to post questions. And I'm going to encourage everyone else on every other platform, keep posting those questions. Okay. So we've talked about latest trends, but let's talk about, there's an international shortage of skilled workers. Well, I don't know. With all these layoffs, maybe there's not so much of a shortage right now. But I think it's always really good to keep current and keep going and not worry about that. But let's see. So current developers are experiencing increasing workloads and responsibilities because there's less of them in the workplace, and it's hard to hire people because people aren't hiring. There's all sorts of reasons why you as a developer in your workplace might be feeling the pressure. So how can developers use learning opportunities to not only up-level their skills, but also to navigate increasing demands in the workplace? Alyssa, why don't you kick us off this time?
So a key theme in my career and learning journey is developer conferences. I got my first job because of dev conferences. I got offered the Google Developer Expert title because of conferences. I got asked to interview for the current position that I have in DevRel right now because of my love and involvement in conferences. So my number one piece of advice I actually just gave my brother-in-law, who's trying to break into this industry, is or maybe you're a developer and you are overwhelmed with the latest trends. Maybe you're burnt out from the hype or trying to keep up. Highly, highly recommend finding a conference near you. Oftentimes, like, you can get your employer to cover the cost or partially cover the cost, but since it's a like continuous learning benefit that would not only benefit you but them as well. But outside, it's just amazing to get in with these people at like conferences and have these like learning opportunities, yes, but and obviously invaluable networking, right? But also this like rejuvenation of like spirit and like a spike of idea creation and like creativity that I personally have not found a way to get outside of it. I just feel every time I go to a conference, even if it's a conference that I like, it's a technology that I know nothing about, I always feel just like elevated and lifted up afterwards. So if whether you're in the space and you're just kind of feeling burnt out, or maybe you need new opportunities for career, highly, highly recommend finding something near you. Maybe you're trying to break into it. I just recommend trying not to be intimidated and just, I don't know, show up and check it out. But yes, that is my
And I think there are systems like conference buddies. Eddie, is that still a thing? I think there was a program that was a conference buddy, that you could get someone who was going to the conference, and if you were a bit nervous and it was your first time, you could tag along with them. And one thing further as well to what Alyssa said, if your company won't pay, and I know some, won't, times are hard, you can often reach out to conference organizers. They quite often have sponsorships where they'll sponsor people to get you there if you are trying to break into tech. Don't be afraid to reach out to conference organizers and say, I really want to come, I really want to learn, but I just can't make ends meet to get me there and buy that conference ticket. And you will be surprised at how many conferences have a fund to get people there. Okay. And Eddie is speaking. He's been speaking loads, so don't worry to seek. Eddie, you're next. So
Thank you. I love those answers, and you're absolutely right about the funds. A lot of them advertise it on the website, but a lot of them don't as well. And like you said, just reach out and ask. And sometimes they need time to go reach out to some of their sponsors and say, hey, look, we've got these people, they'd love to come, but we need some more funds. And a lot of these companies do have extra budget for that. And I think it's definitely worth asking the question. I've actually just updated my speakers kind of page or criteria where they've got to have certain programs to help minorities to come to the events. And again, so it's not the same groups of people over and over again when it's they've got money or the company's got money and so forth. So can mix it up a bit. So I love that you mentioned that. This is a really hard question because when we're in tech, you can I don't know, get your blinkers on down the rabbit hole, and as you said about your whole Mongo and Docker issue, you can kind of keep working at it, and you think you're making progress, and you keep going a bit more. Like, I'm almost there, and then an hour later you're almost there, and a day later you're almost there. And I think sometimes you need to kind of take a step back, and you need to ask for help, take a break. Someone mentioned about being creative, like going to the conference, and it's conferences are tiring as well, but they are very creative. And join a community, again, they're really creative, and you can kind of dip in and out as you want to. And so I think it's important to take breaks, so therefore you don't burn out, because if you burn out, then it's kind of you could be out for a few months. So by being part of a community, or having a buddy, as you called it, for the conference, or just like, I don't know, a few mentors. They don't need to be officially mentors, but they could be people that you collaborate with on open source or in a community together. They kind of get to know what you're like, and then they can kind of say, well, maybe it's time to take a break. It sounds like you're getting a bit stressed, and it's not doing any good. The amount of times it's like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm like, right, I'm not going to bed until I fix this. Let's get it working. I'll tidy up tomorrow, but I'm going to fix it. And it's like 7 o'clock the next morning. I'm like, no, I'm not going anywhere. Go to bed, wake up a few hours later, and then in 10 minutes I solve it. I'm thinking, why didn't I just do this? Like, just take a break. So I think it's important, and I'm really guilty of not taking a break when I should. And that's where the community really helps. So I highly recommend everyone join a community, join 2 or 3 communities, and see which ones you like. Some are going to be super active, some might be a bit quieter. Just have a watch and then get involved. Again, it's like going to the gym. If you buy that gym membership, but you don't go to the gym, it's effectively, it's even worse than not having a gym membership. So, join the communities, and you can change later on if it gets too quiet for you, it gets too busy for you. You can switch to another one, but do get involved. Allocate time. I think, as well. So like I'm really bad. I always kind of skip the gym, not because I don't want to go, but I just want to do one more pull request. I'm just going to review one more pull request, and then before you know it, it's dinner time, and I can't go after dinner and so forth. But put it in the calendar, and when it pings up, it's time to go. Even if it's just 30 minutes, you just get so much more creative, you get so much more recharge. I went out the other day just for a walk on the beach for 20 minutes. I came back and I was so productive. I was like, oh my God, I just saved myself like so many hours. So whatever works for you, just do it and try it. And it could just be having a coffee chat with a friend, whatever it is, wherever you are in the world, just try different things. And different days, it might be something different for you. And I love that someone mentioned the brown bag and learning from each other. I think that's really important. Hopefully companies can give people time to learn in public or to make a small open source project for the company. If it's not, open source, they haven't got any open source projects already. And then they can do brown bag lunches. And if anyone doesn't know what that means, they just you get together and you bring your food virtually or in person, and you kind of just share something with the team, kind of like a lightning talk. And it's such a great way to practice your public speaking and to learn from each other. So I love this question, even though it's a really, really hard question to answer. And hopefully we'll get some Q&A at the end where we can dig deeper into the areas that people are interested in.
For sure. And I think I saw Annie nodding. It's just about scheduling that time. I can tell Annie and I are very much on the same page, scheduling stuff, planning. I'll tell you what else I have as well as physical books. I have my day planner. You might not be able to see that. And I put all the tasks that I want to do. Sometimes I'll have this all filled out on a Monday as well for the entire week. It depends. So it is about finding ways that work from you. Now, Annie, I know we've sort of touched on some of the things that you do in your workplace, but have you got more to add in response to sort of the increasing demands and finding that time?
Sure. Yeah, I think I was thinking the other thing while Eddie and Alyssa were speaking, and I think you all might have hit on this before, but really, like, if you can start a project and then share it, even with like one person, to get feedback, I think that's another great way. I know sometimes it seems super scary, but you'll be amazed if, like, you work with people who are encouraging and like also have the same love of learning. Another way to do it is just like, for me, I need to actually like build the thing or make the thing, which is another way like I can like learn and ingest. And then I'm very okay being wrong and having someone who knows much more than me tell me, hey, this is a good idea, but actually, did you try and think about these other 3 ways of doing it? Rather than just kind of being in my own brain, like what you are saying, like having a conference buddy, but having someone else to look at something that you've actually like built and put a little bit of effort in, and being okay with being like vulnerable and being okay with being wrong and ready to learn. I think that's another way that you can kind of work that into your everyday.
That's so important. It all goes back to that safe place to fail. And it's about finding your right community. Maybe you can't fail safely at work, but you'll find a community where you can be vulnerable and fail safely. Now, there's lots of things that we can use to learn. And I don't want to just focus on sort of like the beginner, because there's a lot of stuff out there for a beginner. I'm very interested in architecture, which is like the next step on from engineering, is like solution architecture and learning that kind of thing. So there's all sorts of things that I like to do, and it sort of goes back to what Annie was saying: build the thing. And so with one of my teammates, he's an architect, and he's been helping me with like architecture kata. So you have a project and you start designing it. So that's a tool that I really like, and a resource that I really like for learning. So I want to hear about the resources that you all use for learning and what you do. Alyssa, we've streamed. I know that's a great resource. I'm a resource to you for learning. So what other resources have you got?
So I know I talked earlier on the previous one about how conferences are so important, and I was laughing at the chat because someone was like, what if you live under a rock and there are no conferences near you? And I was just like rolling, because then someone else was like, I too live under a rock. And I was like, okay, well, this is a thing. So I use Sessionize, and more conferences are using Sessionize to find events and to connect to events. So check that out. Perhaps they have something under a rock near you, perhaps not, right? But Sessionize is amazing. And then, as corny as it sounds, with my limited time and attention span that we mentioned earlier, newsletters have kind of saved me recently. Like, I subscribe to two, JavaScript Weekly and Developer Avocados, for a DevRel one. And that's it. I think a fallacy in this industry is that you have to be everywhere, caring about everything all at once. I have two newsletters, and sometimes all I can give that week is reading the headers of like what happened in JavaScript and what happened in DevRel. But I used to also be following an Angular one because I like, really specific on that thing. But I feel like you should take one or two nuggets from, what you learned from Annie, from Eddie, from me, and like be like, that could work for me. I'm going to try that out, but don't feel like you need to be doing it all or be involved in every part. I think a one step, right? One step towards learning is going to potentially start this cascade effect. And so don't be overwhelmed.
I think that's really key, is don't be overwhelmed. So, Eddie, you and I don't have computer science degrees. I used a lot of things, so like free CodeCamp, I use that. The Microsoft Virtual Academy, which is now Microsoft Learn, I use those to learn, and books. How did you get started? What resources did you rely on? What's valuable? What do you think everybody who is like all your peeps in chat, what are you going to tell them?
I think they probably know what I'm going to say, but just for anyone who doesn't, YouTube is a great free resource for people to get started, and they can look at various people and see which ones they resonate with. I think that's really good. Then later on, they might buy their course. They might dive a bit deeper, it's a bit more polished. I mean, to be honest, most things are on YouTube. Like you said, free code camp's amazing, but if you need that a bit more structure and you need it in order and you want a bit more polished, then you can buy their course later on. But definitely start with YouTube, and a lot of free code camp have courses as well. So that's great. To be honest, I tell everyone to get started in open source, even from like day one. And it might sound scary, but if you join an amazing community called Eddie Hub, self-promotion, but I'm serious. But if you join like a safe environment that Layla was talking about, it could be Eddie Hub or anywhere else, I think get involved in open source, because you'll learn as you go along. There's so much to learn in a real world project, from how to write a good issue, how to review someone's pull request, how to raise a pull request, the Git command. Now, there's loads, and you're not going to all learn it on day one. And when you go to work, you're going to you might get conflicts on Git. You need to resolve these. Whereas if you've done it all before, then it just becomes so much easier, and you can't do it all at once. It is really, really scary. So to get involved from day one in open source, they can kind of raise an issue, and their first issue isn't going to be great. But their 10th issue will be better than their first. And then they'll realize that you can't really make a mistake on GitHub. If you click the wrong button, you can't break anything. If you can, there's something wrong with the project, not something wrong with you. So I always tell people, the worst thing you do is you create an extra notification for someone. That's the worst thing that you can do. You learn from it, they'll let you know about it, and you move on. And it's that whole bite-sized thing. So we've got people in our community who have literally just got into tech, but they're already making improvements to the project. And I think someone mentioned, just getting that kind of constructive and positive feedback. They start off with fixing a typo, and that's fine. That is making it better. That is making improvement. And then from fixing a typo, they maybe add a documentation, because they go through the steps and they ask a question in Discord. Well, this is missing. It doesn't work for me. And then they go, oh, there's a missing step. I can add that to documentation. And before you know it, they're adding features to the projects and fixing fixing bugs, or adding automated tests. And it all just snowballs from there. And it's great to see those people understand how a real world project works with all the automation and so forth. So that's what I would recommend. Get involved in open source, and whatever project you start with, it's probably not going to be the project that you stay with long term. So just kind of get started, and then you'll discover other people, other projects, and grow your network from there. And also, like, a lot of communities do like pairing calls where you can pair with people. which I think is just amazing. I mean, you might just sit and watch. You might not be the one driving or actually doing the pairing. So you might be like the 5th or 10th person just watching. But then you kind of just see how it works. You see it's friendly, and you can see that no one really knows what they're doing. And let's be honest, like even when I raise a pull request on one of my projects, most of the time it works, it's okay, it's good enough to get into production. And someone says, well, Eddie, you can make some efficiency improvements like this, or you can do this. And like, great, I've learned something. And other people come up with some suggestions and, make another pull request to make it better, right? It just needs to be good enough to get into the project and add value to the user and all the rest. And then someone else can make that next step, and it's a bit like Lego, really. You just keep, we add one block, someone adds another block, and it just kind of keeps getting better altogether. And everyone knows I'll talk about open source forever, so it's probably time for me to pass the mic over.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things I was going to say, but then you said it, was you can start by just fixing typos and doing that. You don't have to write code. You can go and make something more readable or help someone just write something better. And that's a great way to contribute. Can
I add one more thing?
Go quickly.
I was just going to say, if someone's new to tech or new to a project, you can add so much value to that project. I know everyone's thinking, Eddie, what are you talking about? Really, you can. Because if you go to a project and, a lot of people say, Eddie, I want to contribute to your project. Can you tell me about it? I'm like, no, I'm sorry. Go look at the project, and if you can't understand it, there's nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with our project, and you can help us fix it because you've got that fresh perspective that I haven't got and all the maintainers haven't got. So by being new to a project, someone can really, really add value. And that's why I welcome new people to our project. And a lot of people say, oh, Eddie, you've got really good docs. I'm like, well, that took like 1,000 contributions to get there, just little improvements. So yeah, don't be scared. They can't do anything wrong, and get involved. And new people are, in most projects, welcome. So thank you for letting me jump in there. I just wanted to add that.
New people in the workplace as well will have different perspective on things. When I've joined new teams, they're like, Layla, you're new. We only get a new person, new eyes once. Tell us what's wrong with this. What can we do better? What can we, learn from those new people and their experience? I was pairing with a MongoDB advocate today, Lise Carter, and she's like, no, just tell me, what is this? How do you read this? Because that's our problem, not your problem. So this is it. And just to add to YouTube, Alyssa and I both live stream a lot. That's another great resource on Twitch or live streaming on YouTube, because you can see us thinking things through live in real time and ask questions and say, what have you thought about trying this, or why did that happen? And we can help you there. So that's really that's a really good place. So Alyssa, did you want to say, and then I'm going to hop over to Annie?
I'll be fast. I know Annie, though, in her previous answer, and Eddie both touched on it, though. And I think it's really important to reiterate that people don't know everything. It's like another myth and there's so many times that I will go in and I will be talking to someone who I look up to. They're like a god, a programming god. And I'll be like, what is that code doing? And they're like, I have no idea. And I'm like, how do you not know? You wrote it. Like, what do you mean you don't know? And he's like, it was so long ago. I don't know. I think it's doing something. Let's look at it, right? So there's so many times that I've been brought back down to earth, pairing with someone who I just thought the moon and stars of, and I was like, oh wow, literally no one knows everything. And I love how Eddie was like, just get it to working, get it to, it benefits the user, because there's that it really is this big thing I think that hangs over people from contributing, because they're going to be judged by their code. And I think if you can write code that works, you're a winner in my book, right?
That's amazing. I love all this input. So Annie, I know you're going to say one amazing resource for learning is the Spring Academy. And we actually have a question in chat, which was, anyone know any Java open source communities? So I'm going to say Dan, who is on a different chat than LinkedIn chat. Let's see if we can get you, Dan, on my team, Dan Vega, and see if you can help with that question. And Annie, do you know any communities there, as well as the Spring Academy and the resources you personally use for bettering your industry? Because you're not a developer, it's product. That's very different and similar, but where do you go?
Right. I think I like both. What you all had already mentioned before is I also try if I'm going to learn a new thing or like, no, I want to segue into a new area. I will tell everyone. I'll be like, hey, I'm really trying to learn like, how to do large scale platform management. And they'll be like, "Oh, okay, actually my like former colleague is now like the manager for like all of platform PMs. Like you should talk to them." So like also reaching out because I'm always surprised at how willing people are to help you with if you have a very specific ask, right? And you're in the right community. So I think like telling people that you're trying to learn a new thing or like get into a new role or job uh again, could be a little scary, but usually pays big dividends. I think in terms of like product, there are just so many resources. It can be so overwhelming. And I totally did that thing where I was like, subscribe, all these things. I had like 20 newsletters coming in, and I like couldn't kind of like sort out what I actually wanted to read and spend time. And then I had this like period where I just like went dark and I was like, I can't look at any of them anymore. So I really liked Alyssa, how you're like, I read too. Um, so for product, like I limit it to 2 or 3 Silicon Valley product, which I think is like applicable to many people. It's Marty Kagan. He's written a lot of product books. And then there's also this London-based firm called Mind the Product that does amazing conferences, and they have really great articles from all the community. So those are free resources. Um, if you're looking for paid things, and this is not just for PMs, but also for engineers that want to learn more about like, hey, why are we building this product? How is it going to reach these business outcomes? Like dabbling a little bit more in the business side. I've taken some courses from Reforge that thankfully VMware has paid for, but they also have free resources in terms of like how to use data more judiciously when you're making product decisions, how to like work better with your engineering team and like understand where they're coming from to make better product decisions. So I want to double down on like, don't subscribe to all the things, or maybe do it for a week and then kind of sort out your top several. But there's so much great stuff out there that's free. And asking your friends and your mentors and your colleagues, hey, like, what do you read? What do you find beneficial? Give me one. Like, don't give me the like list of, 24 in a Google sheet. Like, I need one. So, yeah, I think those are the things that I would probably
I
advocate
like
for.
it. I like this minimal thing. And I think that comes back to just be kind to yourself. We are only little mammals that can only take on so much. I mean, there are the exceptions to the rule, obviously. But you just got to be kind to yourself. I think just additional developer resources that are good for a paid subscription, as Annie mentioned, that is, and Alyssa mentioned it earlier, Pluralsight is really, a good broad spectrum of developer stuff. Some of their courses are free. I've actually found stuff on LinkedIn Learning, which is quite good. Sometimes you might get that included with some other subscription and things. So there's lots of stuff out there, and YouTube is just such a great resource, like Eddie said. And I get a lot from blog posts and tutorials and guides like that, and just dare I say it, the docs. I said it. The docs. RTM, read the manual.
Why
I
did you
tweeted
say it
that.
like that though? Like
Oh,
the
no one
dog.
wants to read the docs, Alyssa. No one wants to read the
Why?
docs.
Because they're like not written well, or why? What's the problem?
I think people want it spoon-fed, and sometimes the
Oh,
docs are
yeah,
covering so much they can be overwhelming.
yeah.
I know, like the Amazon AWS docs is just like, here's a fire hose, here's another fire hose, and there's one waving around, drowning you at the same time, and it's just too much. So, but you can get good stuff from the right docs. So just be, go and look at that. Some are completely overwhelming, and that. So, I'm having such a great time conversing with you all. This is so great. So we've talked about like improving yourself, but what about those? Well, Eddie's touched on this. I'm going to say, Eddie, let's have something other than open source as your answer. Okay, I'm gonna pin you for this one. Okay.
Ouch. Okay. Well, that's definitely
Yeah.
going to make my answer shorter. So we'll have some more time for
No,
Q&A later.
no, you'll
Hopefully,
be fine.
hopefully I can mention open source later. I would say learn in public. Don't do it in isolation. Do as much as you can in public. And if someone asks a question, if you ask a question, I bet you someone else wants that question answered as well. So that way you're going to stand out to them. They're going to remember you. So there's just so many benefits from doing that. And asking good questions. And we're just chatting in the LinkedIn chat now. Asking good questions is really important, but it's actually really hard. And the only way you can do that is by practicing. So you're going to ask a question, there's going to be a lot of conversation back and forth. But next time, hopefully there's less conversation back and forth because the question you'll ask has got more information on what you've tried, etc. Share your journey in public, I think, is really important. It's important, be authentic, to try and curate everything. Use Twitter if you're not a blog post writer. Do YouTube or live streaming, like you said, on Twitch. Just keep yourself accountable and join a community and meet amazing people when you get to geek out with them.
That was a great answer. See, you still gave a great answer. So, Annie, what do you think people should prioritize? What skills they should prioritize building when they're starting their career? What do you think, especially in product?
Sure. I think, I was thinking on this more. I was like, there are so many skills you want to learn: engineer, product, design. But I kind of wanted to just hit on again the soft skills that maybe it takes people longer to realize that it's actually really important to have some humility. You can say the best people at their jobs might be just what Alyssa was saying. I don't know what that code does. Let's go find out. I don't remember. Or it's okay to say, I don't know. Let's go find out together. So still having a little bit of that when you're coming to a problem or working with others really, I think, can put you way ahead of so many people, even if you're still building some of the hard skills or some of the languages. So
great. I love it. And Alyssa, finally, your answer to because this is our last question, then we're on to Q&A. So that's why I was like, finally, not finally, we're to you. Okay. I'm like, finally, you're the last word on what should people prioritize when they're just starting out in their careers.
Yeah. So I narrowed it down to 3 things. 1, build. 2, network. 3, pursue. So 1 on build something, anything, a website, desktop app, mobile app, API for a friend's app. It's going to give you a taste of the dev world, and it's going to maybe introduce you to which flavor of tech is something you'd be most interested in to start running towards. Networking on social media or in-person events, super valuable and something that's just launched me further in my career. And then pursue, cheesy Bob Ross quote, talent is just an interest pursued. So just keep at it.
I love that. What a way to finish the questions. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Alyssa. So, all right. The first question is up, and I bet I know who's going to answer this one. So how can one balance working on open source projects with their day-to-day job? Now, who shall I ask this one of? Eddie, why don't you give us your thoughts, and then I'll see
if you insist, Layla, I'll go first. Okay, I'll keep it short. Yes, having a balance is important, as we've discussed already. What I recommend is I think people try to do everything at once. And what I mean by that is if you found a bug or you've got an idea, you could raise the issue today and maybe raise a kind of a high level issue. And then the next day, when you get another 30 minutes, maybe add some more content. You can hit edit, add some more content, or put a comment into your own issue. And then the day after, when you get the issue assigned to you, you can then start doing a draft pull request over 1 or 2 days. And then when you think it's ready, you can get some feedback as you go along. When you think it's ready, make it into ready for review. So I tell everyone not to worry and stress. Going from issue to pull request to merge, it can go over a week, and that's fine. I think that's really important, and I find it's less stressful for everyone involved, including the reviewers and the maintainers, as well as the author. But also the quality is usually higher because we're getting those breaks that we discussed earlier on as well. They're getting little bits of feedback. If someone presents you with 100 lines of code, to review that is really hard, and usually gets less feedback than, oh, I've made this improvement today. It's 3 more lines to what I did yesterday, or if it's the first one, like 3 lines changes to the project. It's just so much easier to give feedback on that, and everyone can discuss and learn. So I would say don't try and do it all at once, little and often, as I always say. And our communication and collaboration skills, as mentioned, I think by Annie, the soft skills, the core skills, which are transferable to any job that we do, are super important, and that's what we'll learn with open source.
I love it. I'm going to add something to that as well. I think if you work on something that an open source project and contribute to that, one that serves you as well. So if you're working, I don't know, on it's going to, in my head, mappers. Okay. So you want to map entities to data transfer objects. Okay. And you're working on that in your day job, and you go and look at that library that you're using. Your head is already in that because you're using it in your day job. So why not work on that project and pick that one and contribute to that, because you're already in the mindset. It's not like trying to context switch. And I think that's really important. Alyssa, Annie, do you have anything to add to those?
I don't remember the question.
That's okay. It's in our chat. It was just managing balance. How do you balance working on open source projects with the day-to-day jobs? It's fine if you don't have a response. I have another question if you want me to go on to that. Okay. So how would you approach entry-level tech jobs when there are so many? Is it FANG, or do I say FAANG? Big tech layoffs. Let's go with big tech layoffs. Annie, maybe do you want to give a response on that one? Do you have one?
Sure. I hope it's FANG. That's what I've been saying. Maybe that's wrong. I think, again, like, hopefully this isn't too cringe, but really talking to people that you know that might have, they're in the tech world, their husbands, their brothers, their sisters, and just showing interest that you're keen. I think that's one really good way to kind of at least get an interest, and you might have to like carry that through 8 more people and 8 more steps. Long ago, I literally moved out to San Francisco, didn't know anybody, and I was like, I'm going to be an engineer out there. And so I did basically what everyone was saying. I like went to conferences, started trying to do like things with the open source community. I made all kinds of mistakes. But slowly people are like, hey, like we'd love to work with you because we know you like want to learn. You're not a total jerk. You're always like curious. So I think some of those things still hold true. And then Alyssa, I loved like that your first like tenant was build. So I know like trying to get a job, but like if you can show like, hey, I built this thing, it might not be like top of the line, but like I want to show you that I can learn this skill and I can build this thing. Please give me feedback. I think that's another great way to like show people that you're actually keen and like you mean it. Like you want to get this new role or this new skill.
I love that, because that's what I did to get my first job in tech. I was a career switcher. And so that was it. That's what I did. I built something. All right. We have time for one final question, because this has been so amazing. What are the most important skills that developer leaders need to have? So out to the floor.
What's a developer leader?
Someone who's hiring, I'm guessing. That's what I would say. I can kick us off. I think the skill they need to do is to make sure that it's an environment where people are safe, where they can learn, where they can fail, where they can ask questions, that they can make this place where learning is part of the culture, not something that people go, please, can I go to this conference? Please, can I do that? So that's what I think, if that helps any of you add comments.
I think I touched on humility before, which is still up there for me, because some of the smartest, most talented people that I know are just extremely humble, and it's like a whole nother level, and they want to teach and coach. I think the other thing that I found, like people that I want to work with are like really successful leaders who people want to be around, really have that mindset of being kind of more of like a servant leader. Like I am not here to, flash my ego, but like I'm here to
Yes.
help you learn and grow. And you want to learn that thing. There's a conference in Barcelona in May. Let's get you there. So like really kind of being service of your
I
team,
love it. Yeah.
I think is a good quality.
Yeah,
Oh,
Fuel said for me, I need to have a trustful relationship with my manager. If there's no trust, I'm out. I completely agree with that. I think it often comes down to relationship, and I think Annie touched on softer skills, but it really is so important that like you're a human and you're a good human to other humans, and you know how to build relationship and have good communication and open channels. Someone else in the chat had said this is where I think I was going. Simon was like, "Oh, I thought you meant tech influencer," and that's also where I was. I was like, which kind of leader are we talking? So, but I think a lot of these can transfer over because
yes.
some people, I've met idols in the tech industry, and you never meet your idols, right? But really hard blow, like learning, oh, this isn't like they're only a good developer. They're not a good person. And so whenever I've like had the privilege of finding both in an idol, like someone who is like genuinely like lifting up the community and building others up and just a good person all around, I feel like that's the meta, right? Like that's what we're aiming for, whichever kind of dev leader you are, I guess. But.
Well, someone like Eddie, Eddie, you're a tech influencer. You have a lot of people, but you're still a good person and you're interested in helping people learn. So, you're a good example of what a good tech leader is, someone who can share knowledge and is humble and human and has that humility. So, I think that is such a right thing. Okay. So Jenna.
That made my day. Thank you so much, by the way.
Oh no, but it's true. It's not. It's not lip service. It's true. I've known you for a long time, and I've seen from years and years ago. I think like in 2017 we first met at Bletchley Park, and so I've seen you all the way along. But so. The last question, Eddie has time, and this one's going to be quick. Do you suggest contributing to a single project consistently or contributing to different projects? I think that's quite an interesting, quick question.
Sure. I'm happy to answer this. I love this question because a lot of people do just jump around, do good first issues or typo fixes to hundreds of projects, which is great. But unfortunately, you're going just too wide, not deep enough. So I recommend contributing to one or two projects consistently. So therefore, you get to know more about the project. You get to pick on more challenging tasks. You get to know the other contributors, other maintainers. Of course, after a while, if you want to change projects for whatever reason, you're bored of it or you want something more challenging or different technology, then you can, but don't jump around too much. I get to see a lot of people when they say, they want that more challenging task, but if they're just somebody nobody knows, it's hard to jump on a call with someone or get the extra help. But if you've been there adding value, not adding big contributions, adding values. Like I had someone today message in Discord and say, Eddie, I think these 4 issues have been done, but the issues are still open. I'm like, wow, thank you so much. That adds so much value. Love that. So again, it's not even about raising pull requests or making code changes. It's about adding value. And so when that person wants help, with a pull request or wants to do something more challenging, it's going to be a yes. How much can I do to help them? Even, give more than I can because they're always adding value. So I would definitely be consistent as often as possible. I see everyone smiling, so I'm a bit nervous. What did I say?
No, I think it's great. I would agree. I think that's the right approach. Learn the product and the project, learn the people who are working on it, build up the trust, get to know it. And I think that would be better than skipping around all over the place and not really knowing if you're doing the right thing and learning properly. So I think that was a fantastic answer. Gosh. Well, I cannot thank the 3 of you enough. This has been a wonderful conversation. And I'm pretty sure that if you, the viewers who have been amazing viewers, so active in chat, contributing so much, so engaged, it's really made this an amazing session. You can reach out to us. We're sharing all the social details of the panelists and myself. We're always happy to help, I'm sure. So connect with us, join Eddie Hub, join Alyssa and I on the Women of .NET. Annie, there must be a product community that you can share with us. Thank you so much. This has been fantastic. So yeah, I think we are at an end. So yeah, Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everyone.